everybody. If you're watching this, thank you. Also, please be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. Thanks.
It has always been a struggle for Black people to get their history on the books, starting with the 250 years of slavery when we were not allowed to read and write. So you know what? And I don't even know what this looks like. He has a ban on DEI. Martin Luther King's holiday is a federal holiday that Coretta Scott King and so many others fought for. Anyway, but in that spirit, where does Black History Month come from? And I'm only bringing this up. I'm bringing it up because people need to know. And sometimes people just don't get it. I know the myth. We need a longer month. Fine. But people saying that we have Black History Month because it's the shortest month of the year. Actually, no. America wouldn't have given us a month at all. Okay. We gave ourselves this. All right. So Carter G. Woodson, second African American to earn a PhD from Harvard. After W.B. Du Bois got one in history. Okay. So he founded Negro History Week in February of 1915 to bring together two birthdays of his heroes. Okay, the people he credited with helping set Black people free. So the first is escaped slave, and I'm sure you know him, Frederick Douglass, who was born February 14th, according to our records, and President Abraham Lincoln, who was born February 12th. Their birthdays happen to be the same week, and those were two heroes because Abraham Lincoln passed the Emancipation Proclamation as an executive order. And that's why only some slaves got free, but you get the point. This eventually, by the 1970s, going off the energy of the Black freedom movement, they said 1 week is not enough. We need to make this a month. And so it became a month, all right? Now, what am I focusing on? This Black Power not Black Power, Black History Month in less than 8 minutes. Here we go. Black Power meets passive resistance. So in June 1966, Martin Luther King and a man named Stokely Carmichael, who eventually changes his name to Kwame Ture, you can Google either one, led hundreds of demonstrators through the state of Mississippi in defiance of white terror like the Ku Klux Klan and white violence to continue a man named James Meredith's march against fear. Okay, now he had been shot on the side of the street. James Meredith was also looking to get in the University of Mississippi because he was a Mississippi citizen and wanted access to a state education. Anyway, he gets shot, but they wanted this march to continue. So the march brought out publicly the ideological debates between African Americans and over armed self-defense, over interracial cooperation, and different ideas on political tactics for the movement. And like I've said before, like I teach my students, it doesn't always have to be an either or. There's something to gain from people, particularly in movements of struggle for rights. There's something to gain from different sides, something to learn from everything. So this takes form, though, in the public debate, because as they're marching, Martin Luther King Jr. and Stokely Carmichael are leading this march, and the press is listening to them and, recording it. Now, Martin Luther King at this time was 37 years old, okay, which is young because he's murdered at 39, and so is Malcolm X, and had about 10 years of experience in civil rights activism at this point in his life. And Carmichael was a recent Howard University graduate and was 24 years old at the time, but had been a part of the Freedom Rides and stuff like that. Now, during this debate, King professed unwavering commitment, okay, to nonviolence, while Carmichael casually proclaimed, or at least it appeared casual because of the way he talks. The way he talks is enamoring, okay? Look him up. Casually, that he understood nonviolence as a tactic, but not so much something he could, but also because of, I'm sorry, I messed up. I said King professed unwavering commitment to nonviolence, while Carmichael believed it was a tactical thing, rather than his whole human philosophy, like Martin Luther King believed it to his core. So meanwhile, there was a man named Willie Ricks, and historians go back and forth about who did this publicly, Willie Ricks and Stokely Carmichael. So they're trying to get the crowd and the marchers riled up. That's what they would do. They were singing that kind of thing. All right. And was assigned, as the story goes, depending on who you ask and Snick, he was assigned the tact to perpetuate Snick's new slogan called Black Power to the freedom struggle. So as the crowd began to chant Black Power in unison, the rhythmic call and response between the speaker and the audience electrified some, frightened others, and marked a turning point for the African American freedom movement. Because also, as Martin Luther King and Stokely Carmichael are debating, and please be sure, they were debating, they were not fighting each other. Stokely Carmichael considered Martin Luther King like his older brother, and he considered Stokely like his little brother. They learned from each other constantly, and that's why Stokely Carmichael was always, that's why he didn't allow other people to degrade his legacy. All right. Anyway, so Stokely Carmichael, just in case you need a little briefing on him, Black History in under 8 minutes. Stokely Carmichael was one of the many members of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, which I talked about in my early Black History Month video, and eventually served as the chairman of SNCC. Okay, he was a graduate of the Bronx Science High School here in New York, and graduated from Howard University with a BA in philosophy. So this gave him exposure to a lot of different ideas, not to mention the ready realities of racism. Shout out to HU. All right, the real HU from what I hear. Anyway, the book Black Power, The Politics of Liberation was written in 1967 by Stokely Carmichael and a man named Charles V. Hamilton, African-American professor at Columbia at the time. And he is one of the people that they're one of the two people who were the first to bring systemic racism into the American lexicon. That in and of itself did not exist prior to them putting pen to paper. And by racism, when we talk about racism, and this is from their work, we mean the prediction of decisions and policies on considerations of race for the purpose of subordinating a racial group and maintaining control over that group. This has been the practice of this country toward the Black man. We shall see why and how. All right. And this is a quote from the book. Racism is both overt and covert. It takes two closely related forms: individual whites acting against individual Blacks, and acts by the total white community against the Black community. We call these individual racism and institutional racism. The first, individual racism, consists of overt acts by individuals which cause death, injury, or the violent destruction of property. This type can be recorded by television cameras. It can frequently be observed in the process of commission. The second type is less overt, far more subtle, less identifiable in terms of specific individuals committing the acts, but it is no less destructive of human life. The second type originates in the operation of established and respected forces in the society, and thus receives a far less public condemnation than the first type, end quote. So in other words, yeah, they're referring to the German shepherds being sick on Black people who are marching nonviolently and the abuse of the police, which is caught on camera throughout the 1960s. But Stokely Carmichael and Charles V. Hamilton talk about institutional racism, the things that make African-American applications into college get denied, right? For not having enough money. Or they can tell you're Black by your last name and where you come from, and those subtle forms of discrimination. And if it's the Harvard, Princeton, and Yale, well, it's just like, oh, only the best of the best. Most of those people get in through legacy and wealth. And so that's what we're talking about with institutional racism. I've seen that at private schools. The way I don't know why, and there's so many Black people that just take pride that their Black kid got in, as if I've seen plenty of smart Black kids come through the door. The lack of financial aid packaging, especially in a place like New York, people don't have $50,000 and $60,000 a year to give to high school and middle school. And then they act like their kid is so special. Well, one, you could pay. And also, I just don't think it's healthy, the trauma that so many of them go through, and being like the only one or the only one of three. And just because you have 3 Black kids don't mean they're going to get along. You know what I mean? And it's just a lot of other stuff. So these are things we need to think about. I would encourage you to continue to read, especially, buying books before they try to take them away from us. But if you want other sources in terms of things that you might think is more feasible, King in the Wilderness documentary, please go and educate yourself on Martin Luther King Jr. Please stop saying, oh, he was trying to get along with white people. All this. You have no idea how incredibly radical and brilliant Martin Luther King was. Educate yourself. The Black Power mixtape is something that got released to the public 2011, 2012 in the United States. Other countries have released this back in the 70s when it was released. So just go look at that stuff, and I'll talk to y'all soon. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. Bye.